Our cuisine isn't one thing, you know. It's so much influence and so many different levels of and layers, and then also seeing it here happening live in Manila, I think is an amazing thing. Hi, I'm Budgie Montoya, and I'm taking over the kitchen here at FEATR. Erwan's not around, so I'm gonna have a little play. Today we're gonna make a burnt cassava cheesecake. It's a little take on classic Filipino dessert, mum's go-to desserts. A little bit of a, something popular in terms of crazes these days is burnt cheesecake. It was a recipe that I kind of developed in COVID. So basically I took my mum's cassava cake recipe and then added a few little bits of extra bits, and the cassava cheesecake was born. The worst thing I want to do now is grate my finger. Cassava cake is a bit of a place in my heart. It's one of my mum's go-to dishes. It was one of the first sort of dishes that, school days, potluck school days and things like that. So it's something that I've always sort of really enjoyed at parties. And I always had a cassava dessert as an ode to my mum. So I was born in Davao, and then I moved to Sydney quite a young age. About 13 years ago, I moved to London. That's where I started cooking. So before that, I was in IT in Sydney. So a little bit of a career change. I was missing home a little bit, feeling a little disconnected. So I started a supper club called Sarap. It eventually turned into a restaurant in 2020. Most Filipinos know instinctually what our flavors are, so definitely memory was probably the biggest sort of influence on thing, but also speaking to my mum, asking her for recipes, and which isn't always easy when you're halfway across the world. It's hard enough speaking to or getting instructions from your Filipino parents or aunties about recipes, just put a bit of that, just put a bit of this. We always start with a base recipe, and then we try and adapt it to where we're at in London in terms of ingredients and things like that. Like, this is a classic example. In London, we only really get the grated frozen cassava. There's not much starch in that already. Coming here, I made the cheesecake with fresh cassava, and I had to sort of change the recipe because the amount of starch in the fresh cassava is obviously a lot higher. But you do still need a bit of starch to obviously keep the cake together. There's no flour in this whatsoever. So for all you gluten-free folk out there, this one's for you. I've only really learnt in sort of Western kitchens. It wasn't really something that I set out to do, to cook or champion Filipino cuisine in London. It was more so I was becoming a little bit more distant from the Philippines, and I guess as I got older I wanted to reconnect a bit more. But also I was finding things like techniques and flavors that were aligning with Filipino cuisine that I thought, well, hang on a second, adding vinegar to this French style jus gives it this adobo taste, And I thought to myself, well, maybe our ancestors were right if it's being followed in Western cuisine as well. So I kind of started exploring those dualities. I think there's a lack of education of our cuisine. I think there's I guess more well-known Southeast Asian cuisines, Malaysian, Thai, and so that's one thing I would say is, and then the next biggest challenge would be the ingredients. I've always tried to use what's local, and try and recreate the flavors from using local ingredients, but there's no recreating calamansi, and some of our vinegars and things like that. I think these types of flavors are so important and key to our cuisine that there's no substitute. I remember doing an inner style recipe, and it was more expensive to do the marinade than it was for the actual chicken. The most important thing is to make sure that the mix is completely blended and homogenized and they're all together. Otherwise you'll get sort of a nice consistent layer of cassava and cheesecake. So now it's really just a matter of measuring everything up and putting it in a blender, or if you've got a mixer, whatever you have. But I was in El Nido for 7 weeks trying to sort of build this program. So I did a couple of pop-ups there. I'm gonna have one of those embarrassing moments with these things. First thing we'll do is we'll cream some of the cream cheese with the sugar. It was a bit surreal in terms of I'm so used to not having our ingredients available to us, and actually now all of a sudden I was able to get fresh calamansi and all these things. So it was kind of cool to be able to get all of that. I feel like in the Philippines, Filipinos are more open to sort of interpretations of Filipino cuisine, whereas back home in London, something a little bit more nostalgic and want to be a little bit more sort of traditional, not as open to sort of progressive Filipino cuisine. And I think is obviously tied to being away from home and the memories that people have of their cuisine and stuff. I guess a lot of Filipinos are looking for comfort when they're looking for Filipino cuisine in London, whereas here, obviously, it's an everyday thing. So when someone does something new or a little bit different, it's kind of exciting, right? I think the dining scene in Manila is and in the Philippines in general is super exciting. I've been able to eat at a few places, luckily. I was at Automat the other day, and I was completely blown away by their food. I think the quality of the food, the flavors are so amazing. The interpretation of the cuisine, it's so modern but so comforting and so Filipino at the same time. And I think that's a rare sort of talent to be able to do that. That kind of cuisine really excites me. But yeah, it's just super exciting, I think the cuisine here is so modern and so lively, and it's so great to see, I guess, all forms of Filipino cuisine, from sort of your carinderas to your fine dining, all of it being represented and doing represented so well. I think that's kind of the key. Our cuisine isn't one thing, it's so much influence and so many different levels and layers. So being able to see it in all of those lights has been really cool. And then also seeing it here happening live in Manila, I think is an amazing thing. So this is ready to go. No water bath, straight in, 220 degrees. You want it to burn a little bit as well. I think I've been cooking through memory for such a long time, and being here for 7 weeks has allowed me to sort of, I guess, build that memory bank for the future and really sort of take me to another level of cooking in London. So hopefully some really good and exciting things happening in London. Gooey consistency, but it won't be oozing out Basque cheesecake. That's because of the cassava starch. There's no sort of separation between the cassava and the rest of the ingredients. It's all one homogeneous or one mixture. This is what you're looking for. Still a little bit of jiggle, as you can see. Yeah, there's nothing else other than to eat it. Kain na. Sige na. Tara na.